Hi, and welcome to Business Unusual. I'm Liz Whitehead, co-mastermind at Diversity Masterminds, and I'm here with my co-mastermind, Heather Cox.
Hi, welcome everybody.
And our guest today is Deborah Brenner from Women of Vine and Spirits. Hi, Deborah.
Hi, Liz. Hi, Heather. Thank you for having me.
Thanks for being here to talk about what to do when business unusual becomes business as usual. And before we get into that, why don't you tell us a little bit about Women of the Vine and Spirits?
Sure. So I left the tech industry probably about almost 20 years ago to pursue my passion in wine. It started with me writing a book called Women of the Vine, which is where the name came from. I worked in all different capacities, from supplier to wholesaler, consulting, and different companies after the book came out. And then in 2014, there was such a void in the industry of two things, really, is women didn't have a forum to come together and really support one another in a traditionally very male-dominated industry. The second void was the fact that there wasn't a collective voice to advocate for greater diversity and inclusion in the alcohol beverage industry. So I decided to create Women of the Vine and Spirits as the premier and first of its kind global membership organization for corporate members and individuals to come together and tackle this issue.
Awesome. So what other crises or what other business challenges have you faced that, I guess no one could be prepared for COVID-19, but what other business challenges that you faced that you learned from that might have given you some resilience during this time?
Well, I think what has helped me tremendously personally as the CEO and the leader of the organization is that prior to, in my tech days, I love startups. So I definitely was, it's not for faint of heart, right? So no. I had a couple of startups under my belt in the tech startup days. So I knew what it was like to bootstrap. I knew what it was like to really kind of have to do everything and to think out of the box and pivot quickly. That, I think, has been a big help. The other thing, what other things to prepare, I think it's also just the fact of being able to listen, to learn from others. By bringing the group and the members together, we were able to very quickly learn from another because we're all over the country. So when Italy was shutting down before the United States, we were able to communicate and reach out, right? When now in America, as states were reopening, I'm in New York, just north of the city. So as other states were reopening, we quickly got on Zoom calls and things so we can share and work with one another. And I think my collaborative leadership style helped me really get through that by bringing people together and saying, no, this is a time we need to unite and support one another more than ever.
Sure.
Right. There's no playbook for something like this.
No.
When you say what other crisis may have I done, I had a failed business before. So this was not my first startup of my own. I had one prior as a wine supplier. That taught me a lot. And it taught me to, get back on your feet, as they say, get back on the horse. And I think that having that big failure behind me and knowing that I had the skills to reinvent and to be successful. I know it may sound really funny, but I never would have had that confidence before. So I think my failure gave me the confidence now.
Wow. Well, that's what they say success is. Success is just another attempt that didn't work before, right? Like people, they say that you have to fail in order to succeed, or like the most successful people have failed more than they've succeeded. It's just that the success outshines the failures.
You know, Heather, when I was going through that failure, friends and family would send me things like about Richard Branson and other entrepreneurs, you know, Tito's beverage, right? Tito's
Right.
vodka. Everybody thinks Tito just went. Tito, if you ever listen to his TED Talk, he had so many failed businesses before Tito's, but they would send it to me exactly what you said, Heather, is to encourage me like, hey, you know, you're not going to be successful if you don't have a few failures.
Right. Even like Poopery, you know, the Poopery product that you spray in the bathroom. She like gone bankrupt like 3 or 4 times before she was like, forget it. I'm not doing another business. I'm done. And then Poopery came along and the rest is history, I guess, or her story, as we say, right? But you know, the wine industry, Liz, I don't know if you know, because I didn't know, is very different than a lot of other industries that you and I deal with, that you and I, the guests that we've had on. It's a very different industry. There's like this is a 3-tier program. Some states it's like 4-tier. There's different types of distribution, whether it be to restaurants and bars or directly to a retail establishment. So like, how is that? It's obviously affected the different types of the alcohol industry differently, right? Because if you only sold to restaurants and bars, then your business model might have been affected differently than if you sold to, you know, like a Lee's or a Total Wine.
Absolutely. So the alcohol beverage industry in America is, you know, not only is the distribution model is very, you know, strict, but you're also very federally and state, you know, legally mandated. So it's an extremely heavily mandated industry. It's not easy for people, you know, to get their products and to interact with their consumers. COVID has hit the hospitality industry, you know, restaurants, bars, casinos, you know, cruise ships. I mean, absolutely devastating. So exactly what you said, Heather, there were some brands, whether it's wine, spirits, beer, ciders, that really their strategy was to build it, you know, on premise, which is the restaurants and the bars. And now all of a sudden, they're completely shut overnight, you know, without warning. And then if you didn't have the retail capacity, now you're trying, you know, to pivot. The problem is that the retailers were also taken by surprise. So the consumers think that all of the losses in alcohol beverage are being, you know, compensated by retail sales, but you cannot make up the millions and millions and millions of dollars. You know, Heather, I know you're in Las Vegas. You know, if you know what one casino like an MGM, Bellagio, you know, how much alcohol beverage in just one property, and cruise ships and things, it just isn't going to make up in just retail. So that has really affected people to look at their how balanced their strategy is. The thing is, right now, retailers are not looking to take on new brands. They can barely keep up with just what the supply is, because again, it's that, look at what happened in our grocery stores. No toilet paper, no meat, no chicken, right? It's because that supply chain. The one good thing with alcohol beverage is that you don't consolidate the products like a grocery store and then go out to ship, which is why there was a lot of products missing on the shelves. But with alcohol, it goes directly. But there are laws now, like you said, Heather, that you could ship directly to a consumer, wine clubs, or even with delivery apps now with Drizzly. So people had to start pivoting quickly and learning. Unfortunately, for some of the smaller companies, they weren't prepared, and the overwhelming, you know, volume that hit these channels, they couldn't really take on new things. So we're starting to see them really explore that now, but it's taken an extraordinary hard hit, and my heart goes out to the employees, you know, that are let go. And it, you know, it's just been really, there's no playbook. I don't think there's ever been a crisis, not in my lifetime. I didn't live through the Depression or the, you know, the influenza in 1918. So, but I think for, you know, even with 9/11 being in New York, it was nothing like what is happening, and the trickle down, right, that affects all of our, this is where we realize how interconnected we all are, right?
Right.
It's affecting, I'm certified women owned. I'm WeBank certified thanks to, certify my company. But now, I was so excited to get into some of these bigger companies, but they're shut. The Marriott Internationals are shut, right?
Right.
Yeah, these are.
But I've actually heard some nice stories also from some of your members of Women of the Vine and Spirit, and how they've leveraged the network that you've provided for them, that you've established for them, as well as their WeBank certification, right? So like Square One Organic, for example, right? Allison, she was telling us that she was able to leverage the relationship that she made with her contact through Women of the Vine and Spirit, the Kroger, and then also the supplier diversity manager through her WeBank certification. And when she saw that they were struggling to keep enough vodka on the shelves because people needed to self-medicate, she said, I can help you. She reached out to her contacts. And so that was, so I do think that some of your members are really being strategic and really utilizing this amazing opportunity you've offered them by having these additional contacts. Because one of the things that Liz and I talk about a lot in Diversity Masterminds is that it's never just one contact. The relationships are so crucial, especially when you can layer them and have them both help you.
Absolutely. And to your point, we've been doing a lot of these Zoom calls to help our members, right? And I think at the beginning of COVID, there was more of it was the health crisis, right? But then what came unexpectedly with that was Black Lives Matter, right? So now we went from one into this health crisis, now into this, really shining a light on this the issue of racial and as Heather, we have suppliers and everybody that are, people of color, LGBTQ, I mean, it's everything. So it's kind of went from this health crisis into now other areas to shine spotlights on. And I think that's where companies now, we're able to say this time now is not a time to put your diversity and inclusion strategies in the back burner. I think at the beginning of COVID, because it was health crisis, there was that kind of like, we don't have time for D&I right now. We're in, this. But the D&I also does shine a light on the discrepancies and the inequalities of our healthcare system. So it all comes back to D&I, right? And supporting our communities. I think this is the most important time for us to lean into D&I more than ever, especially because we're pivoting. So we need innovation, we need creativity, because everybody's trying to survive.
Yeah, it's all related. The health crisis illuminated a lot of the racial inequalities that we saw, and then the protests and the movements highlighted how the health crisis was part of that. So it's all connected in this, as we always say, unprecedented time. We're having, major lifetime changing transformations every month.
It does seem like it. You catch your breath and you're like, here's another sprint. Catch your breath and then here's another sprint to get through. It's true.
I mean, it's definitely making us be flexible leaders, right?
Right. I mean, I know, Deborah, in the past, we've talked about how we have to embrace it's Women of the Vine and Spirit, but we should have like a division for like, all the different other demographics. I think it might be time, Deborah. I think it might be time.
I know. Yeah. And I got to tell it is, right? And I have to tell you the silver lining of this, right? Putting a little bit of positivity out there in the universe. The silver lining for me has been I've never been more connected with my members because of Zoom. I didn't realize how much time and energy I was spending getting on airplanes and traveling for meetings and things. And I can only do so much, right? But now that I'm able to do it from home, I'm able to, like just now, all three of us are in different areas and we can communicate. So thank God for technology. I think that has been a big silver lining for us, because we do have to support one another, and we need to have these groups and start sharing information, sharing contacts. So networking, I think, has benefited from making all of us lean into the technology, because a lot of us were, not me, because my team's always been remote. So we've been working on Zoom for 4 years.
Right.
But for a lot of people, they weren't set up, right? So I think that the silver lining too is that things are going to change, but for the positive when we come out of this.
I also think people are going to appreciate each other more than they ever have, because, we used to say, we said it for years, face to face always beats out, email, phone, whatever. And I think people are really feeling that they really need that. Even though Zoom is an amazing, it cannot have had a better time. And the creators of Zoom are like, they're set for life at this point, right? Because everybody who has Zoom at this point. But I think that still it's the being face to face, the like reading the mannerisms, the body structure. Do they actually have pajama pants on or real pants on? Like all these different pieces that go into a face to face meeting, I think are still very missed. So I am one of the people who are like 2021, we're back in person. I'm like putting that energy out there to make it happen. But but thank God for Zoom that we've all been able to do that. Well, but you can't clink your glasses, Deborah, via Zoom.
Both. Like, I think the virtual events have also presented these great opportunities. Like I always say, when you're in a conference, you can't just in the middle of somebody's talk be like, I'm Liz, this is what I do, but you can via a chat, right? If the speaker says something like, I was at a conference where they're like, oh, we're really looking for people that can analyze our data. And I said, I know a WBE who can do that. I could launch right in, and then other, diverse business owners can also interact with each other. Like it's not, I feel like it can be democratizing if it's done really well, that everybody has an equal chance to shine.
Yeah.
But I was told earlier in this series by one of our guests that I'm an apocalyptimist.
That's an interesting one.
Right. Yeah, I like that one.
So Deborah, you mentioned that, the networking has been great. Your organization has been good. There's some silver linings. What's one of the things that you hope sticks with the Women of the Vine and Spirits, either with your organization or your members after we get back to this?
That's a great question, because, let me just go back to one thing, because yes, I'm very positive, and that's just who I am. But when COVID hit, that you may not know, but Liz, but Heather was planning on being there. It hit right when we were supposed to have our annual global symposium in Napa. And that's our big flagship in-person event that really anchors the organization. Unfortunately, what happened is that our event was supposed to start on Monday, March 9th, and I was packed and ready to leave on the Thursday prior. That is the day that Governor Newsom declared a state of emergency, but did not order shelter at home or events under 250 people. Mm-hmm. We had to make the call at Women in the Vine and Spirits to cancel our symposium before that mandate. So unfortunately, and I'm sharing this just because as other leaders, right, mm-hmm. We took a huge financial hit, because there were people that didn't believe that we fell into contractual, that we were in our contractual obligations, which was horrible. We begged and pleaded, with some being the fact that this was a pandemic, but contracts, they say, are contracts. So I could tell you, if you asked to interview me in the month of March, I would not be as positive as I was right now. Because it was devastating. And it was devastating because I didn't have a choice. Everybody would have been physically in a ballroom in California when they ordered shelter at home. So I had to make the call early for the safety and the health of our community, and deal with the consequences, unfortunately. But so going back to, what do I hope is going to stick? I'm hoping that's what's going to stick is people's, empathy and compassion for others now. Because when I made that call on, March 6th, people told me I was being hysterical, I was overreacting. I should just do an event, even if people don't show up. There'll be plenty of people. But I think that this has been a humbling experience for a lot of people. And I think that what I really hope is that we're not going to forget that everybody is going through hard times. Whether it's your children that didn't go to camp, that didn't get to have their high school graduations, that didn't get college, all the way to our parents that are sheltering as in elderly, and God forbid if people are sick. So, the other thing I really hope is, as I said before, so many of our members never were on Zoom. I don't even know if they owned a webcam, right? But they had to set themselves up, so it made them really engage. So I really hope what doesn't change is to stay engaged, because the ones that have engaged with us, to your point, Heather, they're leveraging their networks, they're leveraging their contacts, and they're learning. The ones that have chose not to engage, we can't force anybody, right? But the ones that chose not to engage, this is not a time to try to go it alone, because nobody knows what we're doing.
Right.
We're all learning on the fly. So be vulnerable a little. Admit that you're having a hard day, and ask somebody, what are you doing? How are you marketing yourself? How are you getting clients to stay? Because we're all, in tough positions. We're all getting phone calls saying, Heather, I can't retain you right now. I don't have any clients, right? I mean, it's affecting everybody. So yeah, just hope people stay engaged when we go back to some sense of normalcy.
One of the themes that has come up through this, and I say that people need, at the beginning they needed cash and they needed communities, and then they needed connections, and your organization, at least in the community and connection part, is providing that. So I see that the people that have been really resilient through this, and the people we've talked to in this video series, have been the ones that, one, had a strong community coming in, right? They had set things up. They had people they were accountable to, so they had strategic plans in place. But then they did exactly like what you said. They had people that they could be vulnerable in front of. Like, even just, did you get a PPP loan? What did your accountant say about whether it's forgivable or not? Everyone's figuring it out on the fly. And so having those other people and being able to crowdsource and just say, yeah, I'm having a bad day too.
I think that's even the most important, right? Is to be able to say, there were many times, March, April, I just, we're a small team, full-time at Women in the Vine. There's 4 of us full-time, that's it. There were many Fridays that I just said, guys, we're done for today. And they're on the West Coast, so I was done by noon. That meant they didn't even start yet. But it was like, you know what? We got to breathe. We're trying to pivot, we're trying to do, but sometimes we just need to let things happen. We can't force everything, right? I think that's the hardest thing. The universe is actually teaching us that lesson now, right? This is not something that's in our control. And as a New Yorker who's used to being in control, it's something I have to lean into, right? And say, hey, we're not always in control. So take a breath, take care of yourselves. I think also what I've been talking a lot in my group talks is making sure I understand who in our community is unfortunately sheltered at home alone. you know, I'm very fortunate. I have a husband. I don't have children. Heather, you have a house full, so I know you.
Oh, it's full.
Out, you know.
That's why she's at her office. That's why she's
I'm in my office. I try to leave.
But we have, you know, a lot of young single people. We have, you know, older people that are alone. We have husband and wives that just happen to have always worked remotely and are split up. Yeah, it's hard. You know, I can't even imagine not having that at all. We had one woman on our call who said that the only interaction she's had with a human in a few months is going to the grocery store or CVS.
Wow.
Because she's been working from home. She doesn't have family. And the worst part is she just moved to Philadelphia from.
Oh, that's so hard.
So, I mean, so Liz, when you said about our community, yeah, I mean, these are things that, you know, we're trying to make sure that we're providing and pivoting to support those that really need it. I can't imagine being in that situation because I would go a little, you know, batty myself.
Oh yeah.
So yeah, these
are
challenging times. So when you said about cash and then connections, yeah, I think our first thing is, you know, we got to keep the lights on, feed the children, and, you know, keep paying our rent or our mortgages. That's scary for people. And not knowing, like you said, Heather, it's like we open, you know, we close again. We try to reopen, you know, kids may go back to school, but we may have to anticipate that they're going to come back home. I know. Think about all the people that had to start homeschooling on top of, you know, figuring out how to do their job.
Like, oh yeah, it was hard.
Yeah.
I think if I had kids, they just wouldn't be schooled.
Well, at one point I was like, I don't really care if they're dumb right now. I don't care anymore.
School of hard knocks.
Love me street smart, but.
Well, Deborah, thank you so much. This is great.
I hope it was informative and helpful. I just want to give people, you know, we all have to just be safe and be strong, but we can do it together. So I appreciate you giving me the opportunity to share a little bit about our community and what we're doing. I'd love to learn about what other communities are doing out there so that we can learn as well. So, you know, keep us posted. And
where can they find you? Let us know where they can find you.
Oh, yeah. So, you know, womenofthevine.com, info@womenofthevine.com. Please check us out, Instagram, Facebook, but definitely the website. That's where, you know, we're really coming together more on our communities.
Great.
And can people find amazing women-owned alcohols on your website, Deborah?
We do have a listing of women-owned, thanks to you, of women-owned and certified. And we're going to be expanding that as well. But there's some really great articles, even recently, on some Black, you know, owned wineries and distilleries. We also have Fawn Weaver, the founder and co-owner of Uncle Nearest, which is a great story with and McBride sisters and a lot of other ones. Yeah, we have no shortage of all these great women at the helm of their wine, spirits, and beer.
Awesome.
Come check us out.
Awesome. Well, I can't wait to check those out, and we'll make sure that all that information is in the show notes too, so people can find you.
Great.
Thank you. Thanks.
Thank you, Deborah. It's so good to see you.
Same here. Stay in touch. Yes.
See you next time on Business Unusual.